So as we move through this season of creation, I will sound like a broken record if I don't already sound like a broken record. And that is, I think it's important that those of us who are having these conversations find language that we are comfortable with to talk about what Thomas Berry, who's a Catholic priest, speaks to as the new story. So he was both a prophet and a priest who said, you know this humankind in the center of the universe? We've now gotten to the point where that's actually incredibly destructive and possibly even scary. So it's time to reframe our understanding of both cosmos, but also the meaning that we attach to that. So I have developed, and I may shift them, but here they are. What elements are part of this new story? And I'm going to challenge us as a circle of friends to be really bold, even when language is often difficult when we're talking about new stories, to claim language that is going to point to a healthier and more wholesome understanding of how we're called to live and coexist on this planet. So first of all, we need to move out of theism and into pantheism or panentheism or anatheism. So theism being that understanding that God is out there. And it was interesting because last week David Middleton, who attended the outdoor service, spoke about a conversation he had with a bishop in England who said, you know, the truth is, until the Council of Nicaea, we all had this understanding that mystery was here, and then suddenly the Council of Nicaea got together and was told by the emperor that they needed to come up with a creed to bring this whole disparate group of Christians together to make sure that everybody got along, because the emperor didn't want war. Why? Because peace is prosperity, and at the end of the day, it's more economic prosperity. Well, no, always for the haves in that case. So suddenly God went from being in and among to up. And like I say, a lot of our favorite hymns, right? Praise my soul, the King of heaven. And I love that hymn. But I don't think it's telling a story that is helpful or hopeful. So to relocate the mystery, I think, is first and foremost the most important thing we have to do. And then from temple to table. So even Jesus challenged what was going on in the building, in the institution, and called people to relocate their understanding of the evidence and action of God around the table. And from heaven to earth. Remember last week, well, don't expect they have memorized, but that poem by Wendell Berry, who's a farmer and not related to Thomas Berry, that began with the words, everything we need is here. And I know that as we sat outside in the grove on that glorious late summer day, we knew that to be deeply true. Everything we need is here. And then from human-centered to bio-centered, and then this, and I'll pick that up shortly, and from theology to cosmology. So as soon as we're talking about God and the way that we've talked about God in the past, we're already too small. Right? We're too small. We're in that three-tiered universe, and I think our language has to be cosmic. Like, how many different galaxies have we now discovered? It just confounds the mind. So at that point, how do we begin to talk about mystery and with all of those galaxies? So this wasn't an issue for the ancients. And so we don't find a lot within the biblical text that informs this conversation, because the ancients already got it. Well, yeah, of course. But remember what I said, it was quite interesting that up until, like I say, Nicaea, those people who were members of the Judaic Christian tradition were what we would have called pantheists or panentheists, and that was, well, yes, God is, and the mystery of the divine is in everything that we see around us, and so we don't need to argue for why that mountain is important or why we shouldn't cut down that tree, because there was a deep sense that everything was holy. And then, when Christianity became more and more a religion of the city, there was began this real suspicion of those people in the country who were still associating their understanding of God with like rain and clouds and trees and soil. And so there was a real suspicion of, remember that word, pagans, right? They were pagans. Pagan, the word meaning of the earth. And so that's when the dualism, that separation of, the empire theology that we are heirs to, where it's God up there on the throne and then there's this pecking order, that is the theology that then drove the day for Christendom. And the emperor was quite happy with that kind of theology too. You can control people with that kind of theology. Those pagans, goodness knows what they were doing, like acknowledging full moons and things like that. Okay, so here are a couple of excerpts from Scripture, just reminding us that there was an understanding of God in that time, a more female, spirit-driven understanding of the Godhead known as wisdom or Sophia. But most of those references kind of got left out of the canon, and we, of course, know why. So this is from Proverbs. When God set forth the sea, its limit, so that the waters should not transgress his command, then was I, Lady Wisdom, beside him as the craftsperson. And I was his delight day by day, playing before him all the while, playing on the surface of his earth. And I found delight in humankind. And from one of the creation psalms, number 104, our God, by your wisdom you made so many things. The whole earth is covered with your living creatures, and the ocean, so big and wide, is alive with creatures large and small, as well as Leviathan, the monster you created to splash in the sea and to be your playmate. So I've recovered the material that I used a few years ago to suggest that, as I did with the elephants, that we share this planet with other creatures and species that in fact may inform us about how we can be healthier, happier human beings. All right? And the elephants seem to be a big hit. All right. In fact, people were saying, you should do that again in September. There were hardly anyone in church. So we may do elephants again, but we're going to do dolphins and whales this morning. I really like what we can learn from dolphins and whales. There are three things in particular that describe their core values. All right? First of all, dolphins and whales are organized so as to support the health of the entire community. There is no such thing as me first, and there's no such thing as pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps. The dolphin and whale community have this understanding wired into them of enough. Their health does not deteriorate the health of any other animal community, but it reinforces the balance. It's pretty powerful. And finally, they're very playful. So, like I said earlier, the word independent does not exist in the whale and dolphin community. To give the well-known phrase a twist, no whale or dolphin is an island. They live in pods that include up to 1,000 animals. Their vision of community includes a commitment to stay with injured or sick individuals, even physically supporting them to the surface if necessary, so that they can breathe. Every member of the community plays an important role that supports the health of the entire community. So it's one for all and all for one. Older individuals often act as surrogate parents or as guardians of creches so that responsibilities can be shared around a group. Feeding systems, migratory patterns, group play, and much more are all based on these strong social systems. Because the goal is the health of the community, communication is vital, and whales and dolphins have developed some of the richest language known. Clicks, grunts, whistles, calls, songs, and more of extraordinary variety provide them with an extensive vocabularies that cover all situations. Scientists are still trying to unravel the complexities of these languages. One thing is certain. It is only within the heart of their communities that whales and dolphins can lead their lives to the full. I think the concept of enough is most impressive. Orcas are seemingly hardwired by their genes to share. They have been observed delicately splitting a salmon in two or taking turns while hunting seals on Antarctic ice floes. They make sure that there is enough to go around. What a concept. The concept of enough is essential not only for the survival of the pod, but whales and dolphins are also hardwired to recognize that their health is directly related to the health of the ecosystems in which they live. They seek enough food for the tribe, not more than enough, which makes them amazing models for human community. Whales and dolphins challenge our default to scarcity, that feeling that there's never enough or we need more. And as a result of the way we're somehow wired, we have become gluttons for food and property and stuff, and it's killing us. And finally, playfulness. Within those two pieces of scripture, there was this part of the tradition that we aren't very familiar with that suggests that God, how we understand mystery, is in terms of playfulness. I grew up with the phrase, work before play. It seemed that this is how I am wired, for better or for worse, and somehow as a species, humans have evolved to the point where on this continent, anyway, work is our destiny. The truth is, though, that we would be healthier and our children would be healthier if we nurtured playfulness in one another rather than competitiveness, the kind of competitiveness that has fueled consumption and destruction. Look at the countries, particularly in Scandinavia, that reduce the work week and make it more possible to play. I think if we, as human beings, had a healthier understanding of enough food, enough money, enough stuff, our lifestyle would include more play. And we would be gentler on the earth and every other species at the same time. An increase in playfulness would restore a healthier balance, and when our species is healthier, we live in such a way as to support the health of every other species. And so, as I try and find ways of sharing our story with the wider community in our weekly advertising, I use the word pantheists this week. And that's a word that, may create a tick in some of you, but let's just look at this. So, pantheism, panentheism, those are big words, and maybe they're not even helpful. But what they mean is helpful, and that is the mystery of the divine is in everything, in the laughter of children, in the goodness of summer sweet corn, in the God-haunted sound of the wind through the pines. That sounds true, doesn't it?